All India Radio presents Morning News. Good morning. I'm Anuja Kumar and with me is VC Pramod. The headlines. India's exports hit a record high of $418 billion in 2021-2022. India is on cusp of major economic recovery, says Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar. Kashmir Valley records highest ever tourist arrival. Hotels, guest houses and houseboats in Srinagar, Gulmarg, Pahalgam and other tourist places fully sold out for summer season. National Dope Testing Laboratory indigenously develops 6 new and rare reference materials for anti-doping analysis. All cabinet ministers in Sri Lanka resign with immediate effect amid rising public anger against handling of economic crisis by the government. Imran Khan is no longer Prime Minister of Pakistan. Government denotifies him as PM after dissolution of National Assembly. Indian shuttler Mithun Manjunath settles for silver medal in men's singles of Orleans Masters 2022 badminton tournament in France. And in hockey, India beat England 4-3 in second match of double-leg FIH Pro League tie in Bhubaneswar. As our nation celebrates the 75th year of independence, a series of events are being organized by the government as a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. To commemorate the occasion as a Janotsav, All India Radio News brings its listeners a special quiz on India's freedom movement and its glorious history. Coming to our 67th question of the Amrit Mahotsav quiz in English. Name the freedom fighter who established the women's wing of the Andhra Congress. She also organized groups called Desh Sevikas to propagate boycott of foreign goods and use of khadi. I repeat the question. Name the freedom fighter who established the women's wing of the Andhra Congress. She also organized groups called Desh Sevikas to propagate boycott of foreign goods and use of khadi. Listeners can send their responses to the question over WhatsApp on 882-654-6262, 882-654-6262 or through email on amritmahotsavquiz@prasarbharati.gov.in. And now the news in detail. The Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has said that the country's goods exports have now crossed the $418 billion mark. Addressing the media in New Delhi on India's historic export figures for the financial year 2021-22, Mr. Goyal said that it is an important milestone in the journey towards an Atmanirbhar Bharat. He said that every sector of the economy, be it micro, small and medium enterprises, farmers, entrepreneurs or state governments, all have worked together to achieve this lucrative goal.
अभी डीजीएफटी ने बताया कि $418 बिलियन यानी 31-32 लाख करोड़ रुपए का निर्यात भारत ने पहली बार अपने इतिहास में किया है और जो टारगेट सेट किया था उससे भी लगभग 5% ज्यादा। मार्च महीने अकेले में $40 बिलियन एक्सीड किया जो आज तक का इतिहास है। कभी $40 बिलियन एक्सपोर्ट किसी एक महीने में आज तक हमने नहीं किया। इस साल एक और बड़ी अच्छा संजोग रहा कि हर महीने 12 महीने तक $30 बिलियन से अधिक हर महीने निर्यात हुआ है।
Mr. Goyal said that India has truly gone from local to global in response to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call. The minister said the export of wheat in 2019-20, which was only 2 lakh tons, has increased to 21.55 lakh tons in 2020-21. Mr. Goyal said that wheat export is likely to exceed 10 million tons in 2022-23. The minister said higher agricultural exports signify the ability of Indian farmers to meet the requirement of the 1.35 billion population and yet produce a surplus to export to the rest of the world. Mr. Goyal expressed confidence that India's economy is poised to break a number of records. Mr. Goyal said government is now working on rolling out the District Export Hub initiative to strengthen the export infrastructure and logistics at district level to facilitate exports. Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar has said that India is on the cusp of a major economic recovery as a strong economic foundation is being laid with the reforms carried out by the government over the last 7 years. He told a news agency that it was quite clear from all accounts that India will remain the fastest growing economy in the world, notwithstanding economic uncertainties triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war. On rising inflation, Niti Aayog Vice Chairman said that RBI is keeping a close watch as per its mandate. Regarding high petrol and diesel prices, Mr. Kumar said that given the global situation, fuel prices are rising across the world.
Kashmir Valley is witnessing highest ever arrival of tourists. Srinagar Airport is breaking previous records of handling passengers. The airport is handling far more passengers than its capacity. 58 flights carrying 9,823 passengers operated at the Srinagar Airport yesterday as against its capacity to handle less than 7,000 passengers a day. The past few days have witnessed record number of tourists reaching Srinagar by air and road. Almost the entire bed capacity in hotels, guest houses and houseboats in Srinagar, Gulmarg and Pahalgam and other tourist destinations has been sold out for the summer season. More than 1.5 lakh tourists reached Kashmir during the month of March. Trains reaching Jammu are fully loaded from across the country. Mata Vaishno Devi Shrine in Jammu is also witnessing record footfall of pilgrims during the ongoing Navratras. Chief Secretary Arun Kumar Mehta said the tourism sector in Jammu and Kashmir is witnessing a boom and government expects further rise in footfall of tourists in the coming months. In Ladakh, a community museum began in Gya Sasoma villages of Leh district yesterday to preserve and take forward its rich cultural heritage. Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council LAHDC Leh Chairman Tashi Gyaltson inaugurated the community museum. Here is a report from our Leh correspondent.
Ladakh culture primarily resides in its villages. Sasoma villagers in Leh have contributed a variety of articles and collections to establish the community museum in traditional Ladakhi house. Women Association of the Villages, Department of Museology, National Museum Institute, New Delhi and LAHDC Leh together have participated in establishment of community museum. The function is also attended by University of Ladakh Professor S.K. Mehta, Brigadier Yogesh Sharma and other dignitaries. In the museum, traditional utility items, textiles, dresses and antiquities of day-to-day life of Sasoma are the main attractions. Today, LAHDC Leh CEO and DC Leh, Shrikant Suse and Jain National Museum Institute, New Delhi Professor Dr. Manvi Seth have signed MOU for technical assistance and further development of the museum. Museum has a work in progress corner with a hope to get more collection from people's contribution and further grow. With Ramesh Chandra, this is Phunsuk Wangmo reporting from Leh Ladakh.
Youth Affairs and Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur has launched 6 new and rare reference materials developed by the National Dope Testing Laboratory or NDTL. Speaking at an event, Mr. Thakur said that this development will make India self-reliant in anti-doping science. He said the availability of these reference materials would help the entire anti-doping community to strengthen their testing capabilities. Mr. Thakur said that this would also help in mutual cooperation among countries for promoting a fair play in sports policy world over. The NDTL said that these reference materials are indigenous and purest forms of chemicals required for anti-doping analysis in all WADA-accredited laboratories across the world. Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur will launch the Broadcast Seva portal this afternoon in New Delhi. Keeping in view the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's initiative for ease of doing business, Digital India and Make in India, the Broadcast Seva portal will provide a single point facility to the stakeholders to request for required permission, registrations, licenses, etc. issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. This portal will provide easy communication between the applicant and different stakeholders for faster processing of applications.
In the Lok Sabha today, discussion will continue on the need to promote sports in India and steps taken by the government in this regard. The lower house is also scheduled to take up the Criminal Procedure Identification Bill 2022 for discussion. In the Rajya Sabha today, the Chartered Accountants, the Cost and Works Accountants and the Company Secretary's Amendment Bill 2022 and the Constitution Scheduled Tribes Order Amendment Bill 2022 is scheduled to be taken up for discussion. There will be reply to the discussion on the working of the Ministry of Labour and Employment. Polling is underway for the biennial elections to Bihar Legislative Council for 24 local authorities constituencies. Voting, which began at 8 a.m., will end at 4 p.m. Over 135,000 electorates will decide the fate of 185 candidates. 534 booths have been set up to ensure free and fair polls. The electorate comprises elected representatives of urban local bodies and Panchayati Raj institutions as well as MPs and MLAs. BJP and Janata Dal United are contesting elections jointly while RJD and Congress are fighting elections separately. Counting of votes will be held on the 7th of April.
The government has said that it is in the process of setting up Anytime Anywhere Post Office Savings Scheme, which will allow online transfer of funds between the postal and the bank accounts. Around 96% of post offices across the country have been brought under the Core Banking System or CBS in order to implement the Anytime Anywhere Post Office Savings Service. There are a total of 1,58,526 post offices in India, out of which 1,52,514 post offices, or 96% of them, have already been brought under the CBS, official sources informed. The government is also working towards providing National Electronic Funds Transfer, or NEFT, and real-time gross settlement facilities for online transfer of funds from post office accounts to bank accounts and vice versa, the official sources said.
You are listening to the morning news on All India Radio. A reminder of the headlines before we move on. India's exports hit a record high of $418 billion in 2021-2022. India is on the cusp of major economic recovery, says Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar. Kashmir Valley records highest ever tourist arrival. Hotels, guest houses and houseboats in Srinagar, Gulmarg and Pahalgam and other tourist places fully sold out for the summer season. National Dope Testing Laboratory indigenously develops 6 new and rare reference materials for anti-doping analysis. All cabinet ministers in Sri Lanka resign with immediate effect amid a rising public anger against handling of economic crisis by the government. Imran Khan is no longer Prime Minister of Pakistan. Government denotifies him as PM after dissolution of the National Assembly. Indian shuttler Mithun Manjunath settles for silver medal in men's singles of Orleans Master 2022 badminton tournament in France, and in hockey, India beat England 4-3 in second match of the double-leg FIH Pro League tie in Bhubaneswar. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
क्या आप कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम की तैयारी कर रहे हैं? ऑल इंडिया रेडियो के नए प्रोग्राम अभ्यास में हमारे विशेषज्ञ आपके सवालों का देंगे जवाब। शनिवार रात 9:30 बजे FM गोल्ड पर इस बार का विषय है इंडियन पॉलिटी एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। आप इससे जुड़े सवाल व्हाट्सएप करें 9289094044 पर या सवाल ईमेल भी कर सकते हैं abhyas.airnews@gmail.com पर। भारतीय संविधान और राजनीति विषय पर आपके प्रश्न हमें 5 अप्रैल तक मिल जाने चाहिए। आपका अभ्यास हमारा प्रयास।
अपने बिजनेस को बढ़ाने के लिए लीजिए आकाशवाणी का सहयोग और दीजिए उसे बुलंदियों के पंख।
आपका बिजनेस लोकल है या राष्ट्रीय, आकाशवाणी देती है उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का हर विकल्प।
और अब तो आप घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे कर सकते हैं आकाशवाणी के किसी भी केंद्र के लिए विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न चैनलों पर विज्ञापन देना सुलभ और सस्ता।
बुकिंग है तो संपर्क करें 8700014242 पर।
8700014242।
Welcome back to the morning news on All India Radio. Imran Khan has been denotified as the Prime Minister of Pakistan in wake of the dissolution of the National Assembly by the President. However, under Article 224 of the Constitution of Pakistan, he can continue as the Prime Minister for 15 days till the appointment of a caretaker Prime Minister. He will not be empowered to make decisions that an elected head of the government can make. There is still, however, no clarity over how a caretaker Prime Minister will be appointed by the Prime Minister and the Leader of Opposition when they are no longer in office after the dissolution of the National Assembly. The denotification comes hours after Deputy Speaker Qasim Suri abruptly dismissed the non-confidence motion as unconstitutional, saying that it was backed by foreign powers. Following the dismissal of the no-confidence motion, President Arif Alvi dissolved the National Assembly upon the advice of Imran Khan. In Sri Lanka, all cabinet ministers resigned with immediate effect late last night. Speaking to reporters, Education Minister and Leader of the House, Dinesh Gunwardana, said the cabinet ministers handed over their resignations to Prime Minister Mahida Rajapaksa. He did not give reason for the mass resignation. Political experts say the ministers came under intense pressure from the public over the government's alleged mishandling of the economic crisis triggered by the shortage in the foreign exchange reserve. Widespread public protests were seen yesterday evening despite the imposition of curfew. The enraged public has been demanding the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Sri Lankan police fired tear gas and water cannons at hundreds of university students during a protest in the central province. The protest was held despite the curfew. The government declared a state of emergency after an angry mob surrounded the private residence of Rajapaksa on 31st of March. President Ramnath Kovind will reach the Netherlands today as part of the second leg of his 7-day two-nation tour. In the first leg, the President visited Turkmenistan from 1st to 3rd of April. The visit of the President to the Netherlands this year assumes special significance as in 2022, India and the Netherlands celebrate 75 years of establishment of diplomatic relationship. The two countries have always shared common ideals of democracy, pluralism and the rule of law. India and the Netherlands are working together in the fields of water management, agriculture and food processing, healthcare cooperation, urban development and smart cities, renewable energy, science and technology, and space and counter-terrorism and cyber security. Both countries recognize the close convergence between each other's vision for a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific.
And now let's listen to our special program, Azadi Ka Safar, highlighting the importance of the day during the freedom struggle.
आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव।
Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News. Birth of a Nation. India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has ever witnessed. AIR News brings you a glimpse of the struggle every day.
On 4th of April 1914, the Japanese steamship Komagata Maru sailed from Hong Kong to Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. Komagata Maru incident is infamous as it was one of the several incidents in the early 20th century in which exclusion laws in Canada and the United States were used to exclude immigrants of Asian origin.
Komagata Maru was carrying 376 passengers from Punjab province in British India. On reaching Vancouver on the 23rd of May 1914, they were refused entry into Canada under the Immigration Act of 1910. It was forced to start the return journey of its Indian passengers on the 23rd of July. The ship and passengers arrived at Bajbaj near Calcutta on the 29th of September 1914. But
In Calcutta too, they were prevented from disembarking by the British administration.
Upon entry into the harbour, Komagata Maru was stopped by the British gunboat and the passengers were placed under guard. The government of the British Raj saw the men on Komagata Maru as dangerous political agitators. The British government suspected that nationalists were using the incident to instill patriotic feeling. Baba Gurdeep Singh, who had originally hired the ship, wanted to walk into Calcutta and meet the governor as well as to take the Granth Sahib to Gurdwara in Howrah.
This resulted in a heated argument between the police and Gurdeep Singh. A rumor spread that Gurdeep Singh was being arrested. This resulted in anguish, leading to a fight in which the policemen fired about 177 rounds, killing 26 people and forcing many to flee. Many people were arrested and imprisoned or sent to their villages and kept under village arrest for the duration of the First World War.
In the wake of the incident, prominent Ghadarites including Barkatullah, Taraknath Das and Sohan Singh used the incident as a rallying point to recruit members for the Ghadar movement. In 1952, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru inaugurated a memorial to the Komagata Maru martyrs near the Bajbaj, West Bengal. We salute the great martyrs.
We also remember freedom fighter Jai Dayal Bhatnagar, who was born on the 4th of April 1812 in erstwhile Bharatpur state, now in Rajasthan. Along with Mehrab Khan, Jai Dayal organized and led the First War of Indian Independence against the Kota ruler and the British in Kota in 1857. He directed the military operations against the British and was involved in provoking the independence activists to attack the Agency House in Kota on the 15th of October 1857.
Following the siege of Kota, Jai Dayal and Mehrab Khan took over the charge of administration of Kota state for several months. However, after the defeat of the independence activists in March 1858, Jai Dayal went into hiding. Jai Dayal was betrayed by an informer and was arrested on the 15th of April 1860. Jai Dayal was sentenced to death and executed by hanging near the Agency House in Kota on the 17th of September 1860. We salute the great freedom fighter.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News. See you in the next episode tomorrow.
Chief of Army Staff General M.M. Naravane left for Singapore yesterday on a 3-day visit. During the visit, he will meet senior military and civilian leadership of the country. The visit aims to further enhance existing defence relations between India and Singapore. General Naravane will lay a wreath at the Kranji War Memorial today.
Tamil Nadu has joined the list of states that have lifted the COVID-19 curbs as the spread of the infection has greatly been controlled. A notification from the State Health Department yesterday says the wearing of masks, hand hygiene and avoiding crowds can be encouraged among the public to follow on a voluntary basis. More from our correspondent.
After 2 years of intensive curbs to check the spread of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the Tamil Nadu government has lifted the lockdown conditions from yesterday. Over 92% of the people above the age of 18 years in the state have received at least one dose of COVID vaccine, while 75% have received both the doses. The number of active COVID cases has also come down to 275, which continues to see an exponential fall every day, enabling the administration to withdraw the curb. Jai Singh, AIR News, Chennai.
ICMR National Institute of Nutrition Director Dr. Hemlata has said that the dietary guidelines for Indians will be revised very soon and the new guidelines will be in place in 2 to 3 months' time. Speaking to a group of national media representatives, the director said the dietary guidelines for healthy people have been simplified for the first time and made easy to understand for even less educated people. She said the existing guidelines are of 2011. The director further informed that the guidelines will suggest about 11 food groups for both vegetarians and non-vegetarians, useful for all those who are between 6 months to older people.
In hockey, ace drag flicker Harmanpreet Singh scored a hat-trick and in the process completed a century of international goals as India beat England 4-3 in the second match of the double-leg FIH Pro League tie in Bhubaneswar yesterday. India, who had won the first clash in the double-header 3-2 in sudden death shootout on Saturday, thus consolidated their position atop the league table, moving to 21 points from 10 matches. In badminton, Indian shuttler Mithun Manjunath had to settle for a silver medal after losing to home favourite Toma Junior Popov in the men's singles final of the Orleans Masters 2022 badminton tournament in Orleans, France. Playing in his maiden BWF final, the 79th ranked Indian shuttler lost 11-21, 19-21 to world number 32 Frenchman at the Palais des Sports Arena. In cricket, Punjab Kings PBKS defeated Chennai Super Kings CSK in the IPL 2022 at the Brabant Stadium in Mumbai last night. Chasing a target of 181 runs, the CSK were bowled out for 126 in 18 overs. Shivam Dube smashed 57 runs of 30 balls but failed to take his side past the finishing line. Today, Sunrisers Hyderabad will take on Lucknow Super Giants at the D.Y. Patil Stadium in Mumbai at 7:30 p.m.
Now let us take a look at the weather forecast for today. Srinagar will have mainly clear sky. Temperature will hover between 9 and 27 degrees Celsius. Jammu will also have mainly clear sky. Minimum temperature was 20 degrees Celsius, while the maximum will be around 36 degrees. Leh will have partly cloudy sky. Minimum and maximum temperature will hover between 2 and 14 degrees Celsius. Gilgit is likely to have partly cloudy sky. Temperature will hover between 9 and 26 degrees Celsius. Muzaffarabad will have mainly clear sky. National capital Delhi will have strong surface winds during daytime. Mumbai will have mainly clear sky and Chennai is likely to have partly cloudy sky. Kolkata will have partly cloudy sky.
And now an overview of today's newspapers. All the dailies have covered the unending saga of constitutional crisis in the neighbouring country. Imran throws spark into chaos with contentious call for polls as a top front page headline in Hindustan Times. Quoting Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, Indian Express says, India's stand on Ukraine-Russia war appreciated by all. Dailies have mentioned about the marathon meeting of the Prime Minister with senior bureaucrats. A headline in the Asian Age raising concern writes, officials warn PM. Populism by states can trigger crisis, claiming they are economically unsustainable. With bi-monthly monetary review due on Friday, the Economic Times notes RBI likely to hold rates, keep stands unchanged. Times of India reports suicides claim more lives than murders globally and in India. And finally, Subway's solar fence for safety of elephants to be built for tuskers to cross railway tracks between Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu and Palakkad in Kerala, reports the Pioneer.
Before we end the bulletin, a reminder of today's question of the Amrit Mahotsav quiz. Name the freedom fighter who established the women's wing of the Andhra Congress. She also organized groups called Desh Sevikas to propagate boycott of foreign goods and use of khadi. WhatsApp your response on 882-654-6262. Celebrate 75 years of India's independence by participating in Amrit Mahotsav quiz with AIR News. And now, before we end the bulletin, the headlines once again. India's export hit a record high of $418 billion in 2021-22. India is on cusp of major economic recovery, says Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar. Kashmir Valley records highest ever tourist arrival. Hotels, guest houses and houseboats in Srinagar, Gulmarg, Pahalgam and other tourist places fully sold out for summer season. National Dope Testing Laboratory indigenously developed 6 new and rare reference materials for anti-doping analysis. All cabinet ministers in Sri Lanka resigned with immediate effect amid rising public anger against handling of economic crisis by the government. Imran Khan is no longer Prime Minister of Pakistan. Government denotifies him as PM after dissolution of National Assembly. Indian shuttler Mithun Manjunath settles for silver medal in men's singles of Orleans Masters 2022 badminton tournament in France. And in hockey, India beat England 4-3 in second match of double-leg FIH Pro League tie in Bhubaneswar. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.